Welcome to Table Talk, where we've got another conversation with our guest, David here. And today we're going to be talking about design. A few weeks ago we spoke about creation, how it happened, and the silliest, or the foolishness of believing in evolution, and the foolishness of believing that we come from aliens. So anyway, we're going to move on from that, and we're going to look at design today. And I am not a designer in any shape or form. When I come to think about a designer, what is a designer? To me, it's like, well, somebody who can build a house under the design of somebody who's designed the house, if you type thing. But that's about as far as I go in terms of design. What about you? Any design concepts?
No, I can draw a little bit, stick my figures. That's as far as I go with drawing. I guess I like how something should look, and that's what I want to aim for. But to actually design something nitty gritty, I'm not a very arty person. So if all my artwork is stickman figures, I'm guessing you know what stickman figure is. Then yeah.
I think it's one thing, isn't it, to draw a picture of a house, and maybe some rooms and a window and a door. But it's another thing knowing the measurements and how it all fits out, and what you're going to put here and what you're going to put there, so it all fits together. I find that incredible. When you look at TV, sometimes there's programs about, grand design, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And you see from the before they even put the first brick down, you can see what they're trying to do step by step, brick by brick. And I've always been intrigued by that. I've never felt moved enough to go and design something or do something, but when I see things, I know that things are designed. From a cooker to a watch, like we were looking at earlier. You know that that's been designed by somebody who was capable of putting that together in a way more than I could ever do or imagine. But in a way, we're kind of blessed because we've got a designer with us today.
Yeah.
But designing a different way from houses and bricks and mortar. So Dave, I'm going to hand over to you to talk and just let people know exactly what you do.
Well, I do a lot. The kind of design I'll be talking about in this.
Isn't it proper design? Or is it a design with
it's
new pair of socks. You design a new pair of socks.
It's games development.
Okay.
Designing
cool.
games and developing games. There's so much to unpack. Before I got into the career and the hobbies I'm into now, when I was younger, I used to play all sorts of games. And for people who do play games, you never really think about how it's made that much. Obviously, because you're busy playing the games.
You talk about computer games. And
Computer games. Yeah.
PS4 and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, video games, if you will.
No.
Video games.
But it's interesting because after getting into actually developing games in college and then now in uni, I've learned so much, and I've learned that there is so much that goes into even the simplest of games like Pac-Man. Or you've heard of Pac-Man?
Yeah. We grew up with Pac-Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're a little older than we appear, I think.
Okay. Yeah, even that game, as simple as it is, that could be like 400, 500 lines of code.
Wow.
Even the way the ghosts chase you is different behaviorally. Like one ghost will go to where you are generally, another ghost will target you, and there is one ghost that kind of just goes like randomly, and I think there's another ghost that follows the other ghosts. Like none of them have like the same behaviors, and just simple like different changes like that simulates like life, like they feel alive, instead of if they're all just following the player and such. And there's a lot of work that goes into that, because it's not just telling them where to go. Like a computer, when you're speaking to a computer, when you're programming, you have to be very specific, otherwise the computer won't know what's going where. I was actually talking to Josh about this. He says even if there's no gravity, wouldn't like a player just stand in the world? And even that's impossible, because you need to put like a collider on the player so that they can actually interact physically with the world, otherwise they'll fall through. You need to, yeah. It's so much that goes into it.
So what, you mentioned about code, putting a code in.
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
what's
code.
the code for English-speaking people like us?
Instruction.
Instruction,
Basically,
okay.
yeah. So like, instruction, telling the computer how these things should do these things, if these things happen, when they happen, how they happen.
So as a programmer, do you have to plan out
Yes.
what you want, how you want it, and what your end goal is,
Yes.
and then you logistically start putting things into place bit by bit. So you don't just randomly hope that I want this, and then you just scribble something and hopefully
That will never work if you just put it in. In
So
fact,
what I find amazing is like, you know, I've got an Xbox and sometimes I'll play a game called Warface.
okay.
It's a free game, it's a shoot 'em up type thing. And the graphics are unbelievable. Brilliant. But you never think, or I never think, to stop and think, every single movement has to have a command. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Also,
So they've got to predict what you're going to do, or
kind of like you mentioned graphics just now. When you create a 3D model, because I'm assuming it's a 3D game. Yeah. When you create a 3D model, like on Blender or something, there's a lot of like topology. I don't know if you're familiar with that word, but there's like a lot of.
he keeps using these words I can't even spell. Never mind pronounce.
There's like a lot of like different like faces, like you know, like a shape, like a cube has like faces.
Okay,
Yeah, like if you want to get like a sphere, you can never actually have a perfect sphere. They're just really, really small faces all around. A computer can't really have a perfect sphere. But what we will see,
Wow.
what we will see is we will see a perfect sphere, but the computer is rendering like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of polygons to make it look smooth. And the thing is, such a process is like expensive on the computer's like processing power. So we have to go back again once we've created the model to re-topologize the model to give it less faces to make like less work happen on the computer, so that it would actually run the game. It won't crash. But at the same time, we want something that looks nice. So we kind of like copy. I don't know how to explain this simply. We copy what it's supposed to look like and put it as a mask on top of the topology.
Okay.
So it looks nice to us, but the computer is actually handling something very simple. So something like that pineapple, like the computer, we will see it as a nice pineapple with all these details, but the computer will see it as like a really like,
Oh, rigid.
yeah.
Do you know what that reminds me of? The Matrix.
The Matrix.
It should, yeah. Oh dear, yeah.
Is
Really
that
good.
anything like the film?
A lot, yeah. The
You know,
trilogy.
when you're in the Matrix and how things are viewed. So when you're outside of it, all you see is the computer, models
The
and
codes,
and so on. But when you're in it, that's not what you
Real,
see. You actually see
Something
what you
nice.
think you think is
Yeah.
the real person or the real car or road, but actually they're just codes.
Yeah.
So what's the you know, for anybody to build a house, for example, you've got the designer, and you'll always start with maybe the cornerstone of the house or something. There's always a beginning point. If you're making a watch or whatever, the watchmaker will have a beginning point. This is what I'm going to start with. So is it the same with gaming and things? Do you have,
Absolutely.
and does that start point the same for everything? Or?
Every game you want to make, no matter how complex or simple, you have to write it down what it is you're going to do first. Then you have to create a simple version of the game. So even if it was a simple game to begin with that you're trying to create, simplify that further, and then try to make sure that works before you then advance it. So you aware of Flappy Bird? Like the game where there's a bird and you tap and it keeps jumping like that.
Okay.
Basically, one of our...
There's Angry Birds.
There is Angry Birds. Actually, I'll use Angry Birds instead because we're more familiar with that. What they would do, because they have multiple different birds with multiple different abilities.
Yeah.
They wouldn't start with all those different abilities. They would start by making sure first we have gravity. We would tell the computer, this is gravity. And the computer would be like, okay, it's called gravity, what does it do? And now you say, okay, there's one object in the game, another object in the game, every single object in the game, right? is now linked to this object called gravity. And then we'd say, okay, gravity equals 9.8. And you can, if as the game designer yourself, you can make it 50 or 2, you can make them fly, or you can make them really heavy. And then you tell them that, okay, because gravity is 9.8, multiply this 9.8 by their position in space. It's very complicated. But yeah, multiply that by their position in space so that they will move. There's velocity. And then once you have gravity down, now you need to work out speed. And it's all so complicated, but you need to add these small steps the more you go. And then once you've got everything working, they can actually shoot. Now you can worry about all the different powers and all the different types of characters. And one of the things I had an issue with starting game development is I come from a background of art, and the teachers will always tell me, you try to make everything look nice immediately. Stop doing that. You need to put a skeleton first before you put the flesh and then the skin. You make it look nice afterwards. You lay the foundation first. So yeah, there's always a process. Always a
So
foundation.
sorry.
So, I guess I'm just about to repeat what you were going to say. You have a start point, a core point, from which everything else develops, and then you layer the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing to build it up until you get the simple model. And then from the simple model, you now have a strategy that you now start putting in place, so they're building to be the complex thing that people then see. But all people will say, oh, there's a bird flying, but they wouldn't realize the amount of time, energy, the thought process, everything that has gone into just making that, oh, there's a bird flying.
Oh, it's complicated. Because the thing is, oh yeah, you go.
I was going to say you've got what would you call that?
A 4-quadrant graph.
Okay, so let me just shoot up to the camera here, and I'll let David explain.
Well, what I had in mind was, I actually thought about Genesis when drawing this up. Bible says, or the Bible talks about how God created everything from nothing. And if you look at this graph, you will see that in the center of the graph is 0, nothing. Every axis in every direction coming out is infinite, because numbers are infinite in nature, they don't end. But where they begin, every number, positive or negative, comes from nothing, 0. And the interesting thing is, I've tried to use this to explain to maybe my non-Christian friends before, that, what's it called? That God was capable of creating everything from a single point, nothing. And also you can look at it as where these things end, rather than just them coming out. You can look at where they end, and they also end at nothing. I found this while I was actually working on one equation back in college, and I was like, wow, I should really do something with this. I just find it so amazing, because you can find God in like numbers everywhere, in math everywhere you think about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That kind of brings us on to what we're trying to get to. You mentioned gravity in your discussion there. If gravity has to be created, even in a game.
Yeah, to simulate.
I find that absolutely incredible. That even in a game you have to create gravity to get it realistic, you know. And I don't think that any honest, sincere person would ever go to Xbox or PS4 and other brands are available. Like, you wouldn't go to that and play a game after sitting listening to you. I don't think you'd ever play it the same way again.
No.
You would think that somebody had to have designed this and put this together. We were talking about gravity. Do you want to read Job chapter 38 verse 7? Now we know, well, history tells us that Isaac Newton was the one who so-called discovered gravity, but listen to what God says to Job.
He spreads out the northern skies over empty space. He suspends the earth over nothing.
Yeah, so here,
Job
Job
26 verse 7.
Job 26 verse 7. So here we see we hear very clear. I was going to say see because I didn't see very clearly, did I? But the idea of gravity, things suspending over nothing.
Oh, it's
And so,
I'll let you finish.
you know, Isaac Newton is supposed to have discovered this, but the Bible's been speaking about it for, you know, a couple of thousand years, you know. It's not a new thing that Isaac Newton discovered, but the Bible's been talking about it for a long, long time. And the reason I wanted to go there is because when you're talking about design, if there was no such thing as gravity, what would happen?
Oh, so it's.
Well, we won't be able to live on the surface of the earth, would
We
we?
wouldn't be able to have our feet anchored anywhere, really, would we? Life wouldn't work. But do you think it's incredible that God, you talking about detail, that one little detail, we couldn't exist with gravity?
Though I have to say that, you know, whenever I drop something, or I drop food or something I'm making, I get upset with gravity.
It's an incredible thought, and what I was thinking, going back to what you were saying, David, you know, that if you made one mistake in designing,
Oh, you would be punished for it.
so whether that mistake was at the beginning or at the
Oh,
very
the
end,
end, yeah, you will be punished for it.
So if you're designing a game that would maybe say, I don't know, 10 minutes long or something like that, you could play for 10 minutes, and you made a mistake 5 minutes in, so you played the game 5 minutes, and you made a mistake, is that as far as the game would go?
Yeah, I mean, it may go further and do something else, because like I said, computers are never wrong, because they always do what you tell them to do. If
Yeah.
something bad happens, then you're the one who's wrong.
You're the one responsible for
Yeah.
it. So you would ultimately, you know, if there's one thing wrong in those codes, instructions that you were talking about earlier, then nothing is going to work how it's supposed to work. And when I look at the planet and the distance the sun is from the earth and these things that people talk about, experts, it's just incredible, isn't it? The way it's on is it tilted on an axis?
Yeah.
And if it goes over by 0.1%, things wouldn't happen right. It wouldn't exist. Let me ask you this, and this might come across like a serious question, and I guess I agree it is. I'm only raising this question because you mentioned it earlier. Did you ever feel like God when you were doing this?
Yes, very much so. In fact, to answer your question, you said just now that like if even the slightest thing goes wrong, then everything could fall apart. There is the language I program in, C++. If you even miss a capital letter while you're typing like 300 lines of code, everything could go wrong. Like if I was to define gravity and call it capital G, R-A-V-I-T-Y, and then say later on, like trying to refer back to gravity, if gravity equals this, but I use a lowercase g, then the computer will be like, what are you going on about? I don't know this lowercase gravity. And that could mess up everything. And the interesting thing is, me and one of my friends have been at the computer screen for hours, looking for where a problem could be, creating more problems trying to solve it. And then he looked at me, I was like, what if we like scroll up? And we scrolled up and I was like, does gravity always have a capital G? And I was like, and then I changed it. And all of a sudden my player could fly the way I wanted them to fly. And he looked at me and he was like, he was stressed. He was like, well, we've been here for like 4 hours now. But yeah, the computer will really punish you. And that's the thing, you have to be accurate. There is something on this planet called the habitual zone. Yeah, I think it's the habitual zone, something like that. Where a habitat can thrive. So the Earth is just in the right place. If it was too close to the sun, everything would burn up. Like if it was too far away from the sun, there would be a lot of problems. And even as it's close to the sun, we have an ozone layer. Like a planet just can't be close to the sun like that, because everything would burn up. The sun is a deadly laser. But yeah, no, like we have everything put in place, and the Bible even shows us as God was creating things, He did them in an order.
Yeah.
Yeah, He didn't do everything all at once, and it all just harmoniously works perfectly. Even the replication of DNA, when a person is born, they look like their dad, and they also look like their mom so smoothly.
Yeah, I think going back to what Fumi was saying earlier, but we're in a society, and I guess it has been for a long time, where I'll buy a brand new television, just plug it in and away I go. I never take a second thought about where it come from, but as long as it works, then that's okay. You don't question where it came from, you know, or maybe you buy a certain brand or thing, and that's maybe important to you. But it's kind of like that with mankind today, isn't it? That we're quite happy. Well, the earth's here, I'm here, I'm just going to enjoy it without actually stopping to think about how did that happen? Or like we looked at in the last video a while back about, you know, where did we come from? Why are we here? You know. One last little thing. Was you going to add something before we move on?
I'm just amazed at how much work goes into design. I love cartoons. And I'm proud to say that I love Disney, you know, the Disney animations, and you don't realize how much work goes into, you know, the Disney animations, especially the old ones before you had all these graphics, you know, and all the artwork and the drawings, physical drawings that had to have taken place to get the figures to move, the background, and if that is just animation, and then you look at the whole world, you look at the universe, that has to be the most amazing design with the wisest designer ever.
And
that blows my mind.
And that is the point. These games that you're working on don't just appear.
No.
They have a designer.
Yeah.
And the same principle has to be put into planet Earth, to the universe, like you said, to us as humans.
Yeah.
There's a designer. I remember when I was really younger, we used to have like what they call a flick book.
Oh yeah.
And you could draw little figures on it.
Uh-huh.
And if you draw loads and loads and loads of them, and you flick through it, it'd be like they were running or something like that. Absolutely incredible, isn't it? But it does put in perspective when it comes to animation and things like that. One last thing I think was interesting is, you know, one of the things we got taught at school was the water cycle.
Okay.
Yeah, I found that absolutely fascinating, because I used to wonder, where does all rain come from, you know, and where is it going, and all that sort of thing. And then I discovered, you want to read this one, I think it's Job 36.
Yeah, Job 36 verse 20.
Verse 20, yeah. And bear in mind, the water cycle wasn't discovered, if you wish, until a few hundred years ago. But yeah, again, listen to what the Bible says. You want to read that?
Right, Job 36, chapter 36, verse 27. He draws up the drops of water which distill as rain to the streams.
So, do you see the water cycle in that? Do you remember what the three words used for each part?
It was evaporation.
Evaporation.
Condensation.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another one in between that.
It's going back to like how many years ago?
That one,
School.
Evaporation, condensation.
Begins with P, I think.
Precipitation.
Precipitation. Yeah,
That's the word. Yeah, I couldn't spell it and then pronounce it. But yeah, you know, God's word speaks about all these things that science have supposedly found over the past 100 years. But it's always been there. And that shouldn't surprise us, because the designer has told us how he's designed it. And we've just looked at two little elements with the water cycle and gravity, you know, and that's two amongst
the whole
thousands, you know.
Zillion.
And so you're talking about instructions. Well, that's what we see in the book of Genesis, isn't it? Because it says, a lot of translations says, for example, let there be light. Well, actually, let there isn't in the text. The original text, what you've got is be light. So each one of those days and things that happened in there were a command, an instruction from God, if you wish, to put these things in order. And again, going back to what you were saying, if you, when you're doing a computer program for a game, you don't start with the end product and work your way back. You know, and so each day, like you mentioned earlier, by God is done deliberately, because you cannot have day 2 without day 1, you cannot have day 3 without day 2, and on and on and on it goes. And that's why everything was complete when God created man, because everything that he needed to survive was complete. And I just find that absolutely incredible.
Can I go on a tangent here?
Yeah.
That game you said you play, do you like have to fight any enemies or anything?
Yeah, you've got like enemies, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I struggled with at first, programming, was health, like player health. And you can actually have bugs with this. Imagine like you set the player health to equal 100, and you set the enemy attack power to equal -20, right? And the player has 4 different enemies with different attack powers, and he gets like 5 health, he's about to die. And then he meets this like level, like this attack power -20, and he gets hit. If you say the player should die when his health is 0, what will happen is his health will become -15, and he'll live on forever, because you've told the computer only when his health reaches 0.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
But what you should have said is, if his health equals 0 or less than, then end screen, kill player, game scene end. And it's very interesting, because the Bible doesn't really say that God made any mistakes, and I doubt he did, but he had everything in mind. When you create something, when you try to simulate life, you have to be very thoughtful about even the smallest of things. That's just my tangent.
It's like I said, when you look at the human body, it's made up of, what is it, 27 different chemicals or something?
I don't know.
Something like that, 27 different chemicals. Do you know, even a scientist can't put that amount of chemicals together to create something. You know, it has to start with something. And I think the Bible clearly says that God is the great designer. He is the great creator. So anyway, thank you, and thanks again, David. Nice to see you again, and thank you for that insight. That was like way over my head at times, but I really appreciate. Next time I ever play any kind of game, I'm going to be thinking about, oh my goodness, that must have took a long time to just do that one move from there to there, never mind the whole 30 minutes of something that's going on, you know. Incredible. So anyway, thank you again for watching us. We hope you come and join us again soon. God bless you and stay safe. Bye bye.